My inheritance was stolen by my sister. You'll never be successful anyway, you don't need it, she said. I stayed silent. A year later, she showed up desperate and crying. I wish I could say I was surprised when it happened. That the betrayal came out of nowhere. But deep down, I always knew. I stood outside the lawyer's office, the weight of the past few weeks pressing down on me. My parents had passed suddenly, a car accident that left no time for goodbyes, no chance to settle old wounds. Grief alone was heavy enough, but I never expected what came next. I had always assumed things would be divided fairly. My parents weren't rich, but they had a comfortable estate, a house, some savings, a few investments. Enough to make life a little easier. Enough to help me breathe after years of struggling to build something for myself. But my sister, Melanie, had other plans. I still remember the smug look on her face when the will was read. The way she sat back in her chair, arms crossed, a smirk playing on her lips. "It's all mine," she said when the lawyer finished speaking. "Mom and Dad knew I'd use it wisely. You, on the other hand, well, you've never been very responsible." I blinked. "What are you talking about? They wouldn't just cut me out." But she had answers for everything. Legal loopholes, adjustments, to the will that she conveniently helped arrange when our parents were sick. She had gotten them to sign documents, playing the caring daughter while ensuring she got every last cent. "You'll never be successful anyway," she added with a shrug. "You don't need it." I should have fought her. I should have hired a lawyer, demanded justice. But I didn't. I just stood up, looked her in the eye, and said, "We'll see." Then I walked away with nothing. Nothing except my determination. Walking away was the hardest thing I had ever done. The days that followed felt surreal, like I was floating through a world that no longer made sense. My parents were gone. The home I grew up in, the savings they had built, even their personal belongings, everything had been absorbed into Melanie's grasp, like a black hole of greed. I had no safety net, no inheritance, no fallback plan. But what I did have was the cold, searing clarity of betrayal. And that clarity turned into fuel. I refused to let her win. At first, I threw myself into work. I had a small business idea, something I had tinkered with for years but never had the time or resources to fully commit to. Now I had no choice. It was either build something from scratch or drown under the weight of what my sister had taken from me. I worked endlessly, surviving on little sleep and even less money. I taught myself everything: marketing, investing, expanding, anything that could push me forward. Meanwhile, Melanie was basking in her stolen fortune. Every few weeks, I'd hear updates. How she moved into a bigger house. How she bought a brand new luxury car. How she went on lavish vacations and threw expensive parties. It was like watching someone set fire to a pile of money just to see the flames dance. She didn't save. She didn't invest. She didn't even bother to be smart about it. And I knew, deep down, I just had to wait. Her downfall was coming. For the first few months, every day was a fight. I woke up before sunrise and worked until exhaustion took over. I started with nothing but an idea, something small, something people dismissed at first. But I knew its potential. I knew that if I put in the effort, if I pushed through the exhaustion and self-doubt, I could turn it into something real. I picked up side jobs to stay afloat, taking any work I could find, freelancing, deliveries, even odd handyman jobs. Whatever kept the lights on, whatever kept me moving forward. My days blurred together: work, build, learn, repeat. The best part? I told no one. Not a single soul, especially not Melanie. She had written me off, and I let her. She thought I was struggling, barely scraping by, a failure without my inheritance. And I wanted her to believe that. Because while she was busy flaunting her new life, I was building mine from the ground up. Occasionally, I would see flashes of her reckless spending. Mutual friends would mention how she had hosted yet another over-the-top event, how she had bought another designer bag, how she was living as if the money would never run out. But it would. I knew it would. Because I had something she didn't: discipline. I invested every dollar I made. I researched relentlessly, making smart decisions instead of flashy ones. I stayed quiet, focused, patient. And slowly, the tide began to turn. My business grew. Not all at once, but steadily. At first, it was just enough to replace my odd jobs. Then, it was enough to breathe. And then, it started becoming something bigger than I had imagined. Clients came in. Opportunities expanded. I made smart investments, and they paid off. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. And all the while, Melanie continued to burn through her fortune like it would last forever. But forever was running out. A year had passed since my sister stole my inheritance. A year of silence. A year of work. A year of proving, to myself more than anyone, that I never needed it in the first place. And then, the first cracks in her perfect world appeared. It started with little things. Whispers from mutual acquaintances. People who had once been eager to attend Melanie's extravagant parties were now commenting on how different she seemed. The lavish dinners became less frequent. The shopping trips, once a weekly indulgence, slowed down. She was still pretending, of course. Still putting on the act. But I could tell. The money was running out. Then, one evening, I got a text from a former family friend. "Hey, is everything okay with Melanie? She was asking around about borrowing money, figured you know what's up." I almost laughed. Borrowing money? Already? The thought of it sent a wave of satisfaction through me. Melanie had inherited everything, and it still wasn't enough. She had burned through what should have lasted her a lifetime in just a single year. I didn't respond to the message. I didn't need to. Instead, I waited. A month later, the facade was slipping fast. I ran into an old friend who had attended one of her parties, one of the last ones, apparently. "She seemed off," he said, swirling the ice in his drink. "Like stressed. Kept bringing up bad investments, and how people aren't paying her back. I dunno, man, it was weird." I just nodded, keeping my expression neutral. But inside I knew exactly what had happened. Melanie, in all her arrogance, had probably thought she could double her fortune. Maybe she had fallen for some flashy investment scheme. Maybe she had poured money into a business idea without doing any research. Maybe she had simply spent so recklessly that no amount of money could keep up. Either way, she was sinking. And for the first time since she stole what was rightfully mine, I knew she would come to me. I could feel it. I had nothing when she abandoned me, no security, no financial cushion, no home. But now, I had built myself up. I had my own thriving business, stable investments, and a future that was mine. Melanie thought she had won. But the real game was just beginning. I didn't have to wait long. One evening, as I wrapped up work, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I already knew who it was. I let it ring. A minute later, a text came through. "Hey, it's me. Can we talk?" I stared at the message, amused at how casual she was trying to sound, like she hadn't stolen from me, like we were just long-lost siblings catching up. I didn't reply. The next day, another text. "I really need to talk to you. It's important." Still, I ignored it. And then, 2 days later, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Melanie standing there, looking nothing like the confident, arrogant sister I once knew. Her hair was unkempt, her designer clothes looked slightly worn, and her eyes were puffy like she had been crying. For the first time in a year, I saw something in her face that I had never seen before. Desperation. "Hey," she said weakly. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "What do you want, Melanie?" She swallowed hard, glancing around as if embarrassed to be seen here. "Can I come in?" I let the silence stretch between us, letting her squirm. Then, finally, I stepped aside. She walked in hesitantly, her usual air of superiority nowhere to be found. I watched as she took in my place, modest but well-kept, a far cry from the flashy lifestyle she had been living. "So," I said, keeping my voice even, "what's so important?" She sat down, fidgeting with her hands. "I messed up," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I made some bad investments. I thought I could turn things around, but the money's gone." I raised an eyebrow. "All of it?" She nodded, eyes welling up with tears. I tried to be smart with it, but things didn't go the way I planned. And then, the bills kept piling up. Creditors started calling. I don't know what to do. I leaned forward. And why are you telling me this? She swallowed hard. Because I need help. Ah. There it was. The same sister who laughed in my face, who told me I'd never be successful, who robbed me of my inheritance without a second thought. Now she was begging for help. I stared at her, my expression unreadable. And then, slowly, a smirk formed on my lips. You were right, Melanie, I said, my voice calm. I didn't need that inheritance. And now, neither do you. Her face crumbled. I stood up and walked to the door, holding it open for her. She looked at me, as if expecting me to change my mind. I didn't. After a long, painful pause, she finally stood up and walked toward the door. Just before stepping out, she turned back, her voice barely above a whisper. Please, don't do this. But I already had. I shut the door. And for the first time since this all began, I finally felt free. I stood by the door for a long time after she left, listening. I half expected her to knock again, to yell through the door, to demand that I take pity on her. But she didn't. Instead, I heard her footsteps retreat, slow and heavy, before the silence swallowed everything whole. I took a deep breath and exhaled. It should have felt like victory. And in a way it did. But there was something else, something hollow in the space she had left behind. Not guilt, I didn't owe her anything. Not regret, I had made the right choice. It was something different. Something that came with watching a person who had once held power over you crumble under the weight of their own arrogance. A year ago, she was untouchable. She had everything: money, luxury, the unwavering belief that she was better than me. And now? She was just another person who had lost everything. I sat down, rubbing my hands over my face. This was what I had wanted, wasn't it? To watch her fall. Then why didn't it feel as satisfying as I thought it would? I shook the thought away. She deserved this. She had mocked me, stolen from me, told me I would never make it without what was rightfully mine. And yet I had built something from nothing while she destroyed everything handed to her. This wasn't my burden to carry. She made her bed. And now, she had to lie in it. Still. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the image of her face when I shut the door. The fear. The humiliation. The quiet, desperate plea. I turned over and stared at the ceiling. She was my sister. But then again, was she ever really my sister when she did what she did? The days that followed were eerily quiet. I expected Melanie to reach out again. A call. A text. Maybe even another visit. But nothing came. I told myself it was for the best. She had burned every bridge, and I wasn't about to rebuild one just so she could set it on fire again. She was on her own now. And yet I still found myself wondering, what was she doing? Was she scrambling to find a way out of her mess? Did she still have friends left to turn to? Or had they, like me, seen her true nature and abandoned her once the money was gone? I didn't know. And I didn't ask. I threw myself back into work. My business was thriving, growing faster than I ever imagined. I had steady income, smart investments, and for the first time in my life, true security. Ironically, I was living the life my parents' inheritance was supposed to give me, except I had earned every bit of it on my own. And then, a week later, I ran into someone who shattered the silence. I was grabbing coffee when I heard my name. I turned and saw Lisa, one of Melanie's old friends. Someone who had been part of the same social circles, the same parties, the same extravagant life my sister had built for herself. She looked at me hesitantly. Hey. I don't know if you've heard, but your sister isn't doing too well. I shrugged, keeping my expression neutral. I figured. Lisa hesitated, then leaned in. She's bad. Like really bad. She lost everything. The house, the car. I think she maxed out her credit cards just trying to keep up appearances. And now, no one's left to bail her out. I sipped my coffee, letting her words settle. Lisa shifted uncomfortably. She's been staying with some guy, but I think he kicked her out too. I don't even know where she's living right now. I didn't respond. Because what was there to say? Melanie had taken everything from me and wasted it. She had mocked me, humiliated me, left me with nothing, while she indulged in the kind of life she thought she was entitled to. And now? Now she was nothing. Lisa studied my face, waiting for a reaction. I don't know, I just thought you'd want to know. I nodded slowly. Thanks. And with that, she left. I sat there for a long time after that, staring into my coffee, thinking. Melanie was finally facing the consequences of her actions. She had dug her grave. And I wasn't going to pull her out. But for some reason, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over yet. I should have known she would come back. It was late, past midnight, when the pounding on my door started. Not a knock. Not a timid tap. Desperate, frantic banging. I sat up in bed, groggy but instantly alert. I had a feeling I knew exactly who it was. And I was right. When I opened the door, Melanie stood there, her once pristine appearance now completely destroyed. Her hair was messy, her clothes wrinkled and stained, her eyes swollen from crying. She looked like a ghost of the person she used to be. Please, she whispered. Her voice was hoarse, barely above a breath. I have nowhere else to go. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. And whose fault is that? She flinched, looking down at the ground. I know I messed up. But I swear I never thought it would go this far. I thought I could fix it. I stayed silent, watching her squirm under the weight of her own mistakes. She swallowed hard. I lost everything, okay? I have nothing left. No money, no friends, no place to stay. And she hesitated, voice cracking. I didn't know where else to go. I let her words hang in the air, cold and heavy. A year ago, she sat in a lawyer's office and stole everything from me with a smug smile on her face. She told me I'd never be successful, that I didn't need the inheritance because I'd never do anything worthwhile with my life. And now she was standing in front of me, a broken shell of herself, begging for help. Part of me wanted to tell her to leave, to throw her words back in her face. But instead, I asked one simple question. What do you expect me to do, Melanie? She bit her lip, her hands trembling. Just let me stay for a little while. Just until I get back on my feet. I let out a breath. And then what? She looked confused. What do you mean? I narrowed my eyes. If I let you stay, then what? You rebuild your life and go right back to who you were? You take advantage of people again? Use them, just like you used me? Her eyes widened. No. I swear I've changed. I shook my head. I don't believe you. Her face crumpled. She wasn't expecting that. You don't understand, she whispered. I have no one. And for the first time in my life, I saw my sister not as the manipulative person who had stolen from me, but as someone truly, utterly alone. I could end this right now. I could shut the door in her face and walk away, leaving her to deal with the wreckage of her own choices. Or I could give her one final chance. I stared at her for a long moment, thinking. And then I made my decision. I stared at Melanie, letting the silence stretch between us. A year ago, she had laughed in my face. Told me I didn't deserve anything. Stole my inheritance and spent it like the world owed her something. And now? She was standing at my door begging. The irony was almost poetic. She shifted under my gaze, her hands shaking, her face pale. Please, she whispered. Just a few nights. I'll figure something out. I sighed. You really think it's that simple? She blinked, caught off guard. What do you mean? I stepped forward, my voice calm but firm. If I let you stay, do you really think that erases everything you did? That suddenly, we're family again? She swallowed hard. I don't know. Her voice cracked. I just need help. I closed my eyes for a moment, then opened them. This was it. The moment. I could do what she did to me, turn my back, walk away, leave her to fend for herself. It would be fair. It would be justified. But I wasn't like her. I would never be like her. I let out a slow breath. I'll make you a deal. Her eyes lit up with hope. Anything, she said quickly. You don't get to stay here, I said, watching her face fall. But I'll pay for 1 month at a cheap motel. 1 month. That's it. After that, you're on your own. Her lip trembled. You'd do that? I nodded. But only once. No handouts. No second chances. You make this work, or you don't. She was silent, as if she couldn't quite believe what I was saying. Then, slowly, she nodded. Okay. I understand. I grabbed my phone, found a nearby budget motel, and booked a room for 30 days. Then I handed her a piece of paper with the details. That's all you get, I said. Make it count. Tears welled up in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. I nodded, stepping back toward the door. And just before I closed it, I met her gaze one last time. Don't waste this, Melanie, I said. Because I won't be here next time. Then, without another word, I shut the door. The door clicked shut, and with it, the last piece of the past I had been carrying. For a long moment, I just stood there, letting it sink in. It was over. I hadn't forgiven Melanie. That wasn't what this was. She had stolen from me, humiliated me, and abandoned me when I needed her most. Some wounds don't heal, no matter how much time passes. But I wasn't going to let her define me anymore. I had spent the past year proving something, to myself, to the world, to the ghost of my parents' expectations. I built a life from the ground up, a life that wasn't dependent on anyone's handouts. And now, standing in my own home, built by my own efforts, I realized something. I had won.